This is Career Coaching X's and O's, and I'm your host, Mark Anthony Peterson, the founder and thought leader at Sierra Consulting, a small business strategy and technology consulting firm. A small part of our practice is executive coaching. These episodes are the summations of some of those sessions. Today's episode is entitled 5 Tips for Managing a Personal Crisis at Work. Everyone tells you to keep your personal crisis out of the workplace so that it doesn't become a burden or an unnecessary distraction to others. That's sound advice. It's just not realistic. Eventually, everyone will have a personal crisis that you're going to have to end up managing at work. It's going to spill over into your work lifestyle. This episode is going to give you 5 steps that you need to take to develop a plan for managing those personal crises at work. It's also going to give you 5 steps to help you successfully implement that plan when the day occurs when you have a personal crisis that's encroaching on your ability to do your job. What's the first tip for preparing your personal crisis plan? The first thing you want to do is make sure you know all the rules surrounding virtual or remote working and flex time. Understand that because that's going to be a critical part of developing your personal crisis plan. Know when you can work virtually or remotely, and understand that there are some flex time or flex periods that you can implement into your plan, giving you the ability to come in early, 6:30, 7 o'clock, so that you can leave early and attend to whatever the crisis is that's going on in your life. The second thing you want to do is see if your company allows employees to share sick days. I have a friend who is a teacher who has a very severe medical problem that has required her to be out of work for more than 60 days. She has run out of sick days and personal days. Fortunately for her, the school district allows other teachers to contribute their sick days and personal days to her account so that she can continue to get the treatment she needs while also maintaining her salary. Because those sick days give her the ability to pull in income and not go on unpaid leave. What's the third thing you should look into? The third thing you should look into is see if your company has an EAP plan, an employee assistance plan, or a corporate wellness plan that gives you support whenever there's a personal health crisis or personal mental crisis. Many firms have assistants that can help you find resources, help you plan those resources, and help you coordinate your work schedules so that they don't conflict and keep you employed while you work through that crisis. What's the fourth thing you should do? The fourth thing you should do is have an action plan for all of your work or your accounts that you're working on. What I mean by an action plan is a written summary of everything that needs to happen with those accounts in the event that you're not at work. So the top 3 tasks that are associated with those accounts, as well as the next steps, if any, that are needed to close any open loops associated with those accounts. Essentially, you're developing a corporate last will and testament for the work that you are assigned to. That makes it very easy for anyone in your group to pick the work up and complete it in the event that you're going to have to be out for a few days or few hours or even a few weeks. You don't want to be a burden to your team, and by having this plan, you show how valuable you are and how organized you are, and that will be beneficial down the road when you return. What's the last step you should take in developing your personal crisis plan? Develop a catalog of all of the passwords for sites that you use to do your work. Just like that action plan that I mentioned earlier for your accounts, anybody that's doing the work that needs to get done, if you're out, they need to have access to your work PC. They need to have access to the websites that you use to conduct that work, and make sure that it's clear so that people can follow the roadmap from your action plan to the password catalog so that they can complete the work without having to call you. If you're going through a personal crisis, the last thing you need is the office calling you repeatedly, asking for passwords, asking for updates on accounts. If you have all of that stuff spelled out, you can then attend to the personal crisis and get back to work as fast as possible. Now, these last two steps are steps that I recommend to all executives, regardless of whether or not you're building a personal crisis plan. It's good to have a summary of what you're doing next so that you can organize your own day, as well as maintaining your passwords, because you don't want to forget them if you need to access those accounts. These are all smart things to do, and certainly steps you want to have prepared in case that personal crisis comes along at an unexpected time, which they all do. Now, let's talk about the 5 things you need to do to successfully implement this plan. Just pulling this together doesn't mean it's going to be successful, because you got to sell this plan to your boss and to your constituents that'll do the work for you while you're out attending to this personal crisis. So, the first step to successfully implementing this personal crisis plan, tell your boss or your HR manager. Tell them the problem. And I know many of you are thinking, I like to keep my life at home separate from my life at work. Not telling your boss that you're going through a personal problem that may require you taking some time off from work is a big, big mistake. Certainly waiting to the last minute to do it with no plan, with no kind of forethought on how the work will get done, you make yourself look like a worse employee. I have an executive that I coach that came to me with a personal problem that they were trying to manage on behalf of their child. The first step after telling them to develop a personal crisis plan was to tell them to inform the boss. Let them know that there is a problem and that you may need to make some changes to your schedule in order to manage the problem, but that the work would be done. Now, let's talk about how to tell that boss. You don't have to reveal all the details, just the elements of the problem that are going to impact your work. For example, I have a personal problem that may require me to leave work an hour early. To compensate, I'm going to flex my time and come in an hour early so that I can leave by 4 o'clock. In the event that anything comes up after 4, here's what my personal plan will do to mitigate any issues. Is that okay with you, boss? The executive that I coached on giving that talk to her boss, the boss was more than empathetic and helped brainstorm additional ideas to include in that personal crisis plan. What's the second thing you can do to successfully implement the plan? Make sure your corporate wingman or wingwoman is briefed on the plan. I've talked about a corporate wingman or corporate wingwoman as someone that could help sell you to others so that you don't have to brag about yourself. Well, that corporate wingman or wingwoman is also there to have your back when you are not around, certainly when you're dealing with a personal crisis. And if you've briefed them on the details of your personal crisis plan, they can make sure that it gets successfully implemented. They'll know that you have an action plan for all of your accounts. They'll know that you will have passwords for all of the necessary websites stored with that action plan. So that wingman or wingwoman is your personal crisis plan advocate. They're telling people you prepared for this moment and that there's not going to be a problem getting the work done. What's the third thing you need to do to successfully implement your personal crisis plan? Make sure you handle all of your personal crisis business on personal devices and not on corporate devices. You don't want to be doing web searches on the corporate computer. You don't want to be placing calls to doctors or lawyers or anybody else connected to your personal crisis on a corporate device. That leaves a trail for others to get more into your personal crisis than you may want to share. Keep it on the personal devices and make calls on your personal break times so that you are within compliance of everything your company allows. What's the fourth thing? This is most important when dealing with a personal crisis. Find a quiet place where you can meditate. A personal crisis zaps you of almost all the energy that you may have to keep yourself motivated throughout the day. You need to find a place in the corporate office where you can recharge your batteries and regain your focus. Find a spot, do a little yoga or say a prayer, whatever can give you enough of a recharge to keep the focus and to help realign your emotions. That's what's going to be most critical. You want to avoid having emotional breakdowns in the middle of work. I don't want to go into the details of how certain people, particularly women, can be judged if they're seen as having emotional breakdowns. Serena Williams, the world-class tennis player, and Nike, they have a commercial out basically explaining how women are viewed when they erupt emotionally in the workplace. So I'm not going to go into that detail. I just recommend you go look at that commercial. But find that quiet place so that you can rearrange your emotions and get through every day until this crisis is done. This step is most important to making your plan successful because people are depending on you to be strong at work and to deliver leadership that's going to get you to the corner office. And what's the last thing for successfully implementing your personal crisis plan? Update, or communicate. So after you have this plan in place, you want to provide updates to your boss and to the HR manager so that they know enough of what's going on to continue to give you the rope you need to manage the crisis, and to let them know when the crisis has been put to bed and that you're going to be returning back to your normal hours or to your normal program or your normal schedule. That sort of organization, believe it or not, when the crisis is over, can be looked at extremely favorably by senior executives who can see that you may have had a personal crisis and you managed it just like you would manage any business-related crisis without any disruption to work. And trust me, as a former senior executive, I've been there. I've had the personal crisis that spills over into work time, and I've had to implement everything I'm describing here. I've been my own client in that regard. I hope you found this episode helpful. If so, hit subscribe. I know you'll share this episode with your colleagues because the best people listen to this podcast. Tell us the issues you're struggling with in your career, and we will research them, and we might even do a podcast episode about it. If you need more support for your career, please find us on the web at ceyero.com, CEYERO.com, and let us help you develop a plan for your career. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Ceyero Consulting. This has been Career Coaching, X's and O's, and I am your host, Mark Anthony Peterson, founder and thought leader at Ceyero Consulting.